Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at setting up and working with our virtual fuel tank feature found in our Link G5 and G4X programming. Our virtual fuel tank allows us to keep track of how much fuel we're using and how much fuel is left within our fuel tank based on virtual channels and calculations going on inside of the Link. Now, it does require us to be in the model fuel equation mode, and we do like to see or have a driven speed sensor so we can calculate a mile per gallon reading, as we'll show here and discuss in this tutorial. Let's jump in and take a look at how we can work with this virtual fuel tank and understand all of the different runtime values and what they mean so you can use them for logging purposes or monitoring purposes. Let's say you have a digital dash. You can see various different channels coming from the Link. You can actually keep track of what your fuel consumption is going to be and have this virtual fuel tank feature work for you. This is nice if you have a fuel cell, let's say in your race vehicle, and you don't have a fuel level sensor at all, or you have an inaccurate fuel level sensor you don't trust. This is what I would definitely use. So let's see how we can set this up. It's pretty simple. So the very first thing we're going to do is jump over into our chassis tab in our programming here in our page layouts. Let's go here to layout. Let's go over here to chassis. Now in our chassis window, we're going to have our virtual fuel tank window right here that we're going to be working with. The very first thing to talk about and understand what's going on here with our virtual fuel tank. We have our first option, reset accumulated fuel usage. Right now, this is set to key on. Let's understand what this actually means. So let's move down here into our parameters list. We're going to find we have a bunch of different channels towards the bottom of our list here. We see accumulated fuel consumption, accumulated fuel / distance, which is mile per gallon or kilometer per liter. We also have then accumulated distance. We have our instantaneous fuel consumption and instantaneous fuel distance, which is essentially our instantaneous economy reading. Then we also have our fuel left. This is a status. And then the fuel left, this is actually going to give us how much gallons or liters we have in our fuel system. So the fuel left and the fuel left here, these two channels correspond to this virtual fuel tank programming. However, all of our other channels here, the instantaneous and the accumulated channels, tie into our actual fueling delivery to our engine in the model mode, because we have a very accurate tracking of how much fuel consumption the engine is using at any given time in the model mode. That's how we are able to use these channels here with accuracy to be able to tie into knowing how much fuel we have left in our fuel tank using the virtual fuel tank feature. So what we're seeing here is the reset accumulated fuel usage. When it's set here to the key on option, what this is saying here is every time we turn the key on, it resets our accumulated fuel consumption, accumulated fuel distance, and accumulated distance. This is essentially zeroing out the equivalent of the odometer and of your mile per gallon tracking, your fuel economy tracking with your Link. The accumulated fuel consumption is also accounting for how much fuel you've used. So it's essentially just resetting all of these channels every time we turn the ignition key on. That may or may not be something you want to do. If you leave this option here to off, every time you turn your Link back on again, it's not going to clear out your accumulated fuel consumption channels. Now, the instantaneous channels will always clear out regardless of whatever option we're choosing here, because these are calculated just in the instantaneous, in the real time as you're driving. The accumulated, you can think of more of a long-term learning or long-term storage of that information. So I typically leave this on key on because it's not super important that we have our accumulated fuel consumption, distance, and fuel distance populated, and constantly keeping into the memory for the Link, but it's up to you how you want to do this. So I'll right now keep this to key on, but you should understand what this option here means. So that's pretty simple to understand. The next thing we have here is our fuel added mode. Here we have a couple options. We have volume added, volume filled to, or hold up down. The best option, I think, here for working with the virtual fuel tank is volume filled up to. This is going to go ahead and click OK here so we can see what this is going to do. This is going to go and say every time we have a button that's used for this volume filled up to option, every time we click the button, that's going to be when we want to fill up our fuel tank or fuel cell. If I have a 10-gallon fuel tank or fuel cell, I'll say my reset volume here would be then set to 10 gallons. So if I have a 10-gallon tank, I'll put 10 here. If I have a 5-gallon tank, I'll put 5. Whatever your tank size capacity is going to be, that's what you enter in here when you use this volume filled up to option. So every time I'm going to be assigning a switch here, every time I hit my switch, whether it's going to be a CAN keypad switch or a toggle switch or a momentary button switch, doesn't matter, it will tell the virtual fuel tank that we've refueled and we have a full tank. That's very important to make this feature work. Then we have a fuel left warning volume. This is going to say in the virtual fuel tank, that's going to be corresponding to our air status here. So the fuel left here, that's our air status. The fuel left channel, this is our actual gallons. So what's going to happen is when we push the button that we're going to assign here, whatever we assign here for the reset volume, it's going to make this fuel left go to that value. And then as we start to drive, as we start to consume the fuel and our channels here start to populate, that will then show the fuel left starting to dwindle down from the amount that we've entered in here that we filled up to. So 10 gallons in this case. The fuel left. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.